The chill of the autumn air hit Jamal Davis first, sharp and unforgiving, a stark contrast to the stale, recycled breath of a prison cell. He stood on the cracked asphalt outside the gates, a thin duffel bag slung over his shoulder, the heavy metal door clanging shut behind him with a finality that echoed in his chest. 7 years. 7 years for choices made in the fog of youth, desperation, and misguided loyalty. Now at 28, the world outside felt both alien and terrifyingly familiar. His parole officer, a stern but not unkind woman named Miss Evans, waved from her car. "Jamal, ready to make a real life for yourself." He nodded, his voice a gravelly whisper. "Ready as I'll ever be, Miss Evans." But was he? The city's skyline shimmered in the distance, a mosaic of steel and glass, and for a moment he saw it not as a beacon of opportunity, but as a sprawling, dangerous maze full of old ghosts and new traps. He had nothing but the clothes on his back, a bus token, and a gnawing uncertainty that had taken root deep in his gut. His family had stayed distant, bruised by his past actions, hopeful but wary. He didn't blame them. Shame was a heavy cloak, and he wore it well. His first weeks were a blur of cramped halfway houses, endless job applications, and the constant, nagging feeling of being watched, judged. Every glance felt like an accusation, every closed door a reminder of his mistakes. He tried construction, but his record was a red flag. He applied for restaurant work, but the background checks always halted him. Money was scarce, and the gnawing hunger in his stomach was a familiar, unwelcome guest. One evening, huddled on a park bench as the streetlights flickered on, he saw them. A group of teenagers, no older than 15, gathered under the bridge, the telltale glint of a small bag changing hands. Their swagger, their nervous energy, the way they eyed their surroundings with a mix of defiance and fear, it was a mirror of his own past. A cold dread seeped into him. He saw himself in their eyes, trapped in a cycle he knew all too well. That night, lying on a lumpy mattress, something shifted within Jamal. He couldn't go back to that life, but more importantly, he couldn't stand by and watch others tumble into the same abyss. His past, once a crippling burden, began to feel like a twisted kind of asset. He understood their language, their pressures, their desperate need for belonging. He knew the dead ends they were headed for. The next day, he walked into the local community center, a dusty, underfunded place he'd barely noticed before. A flyer on the bulletin board caught his eye. Volunteer mentors needed. He swallowed hard, pushed down the surge of self-doubt. He knew he didn't fit the typical mentor profile, but he also knew he had something valuable to offer, a hard-won perspective. The director, a kind-eyed woman named Mrs. Davies, raised an eyebrow when she saw his application. "Jamal Davis, I'll be honest, your record is extensive." He met her gaze, unflinching. "I know, ma'am, and I'm not proud of it, but I also know what those kids are going through. I was one of those kids. I made every wrong turn there was. Maybe I can show them a different route." Mrs. Davies studied him for a long moment, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. "This isn't just about talking, Jamal. It's about building trust, about being a consistent, positive presence. Are you ready for that kind of responsibility? Because if you mess this up, it's not just your second chance that's on the line, it's the trust these kids place in us." "I understand," he said, his voice steady. "And I'm ready." She took a chance on him, starting him with grunt work, cleaning, setting up for events. He worked harder than anyone, showing up early, staying late, never complaining. He earned respect not through words, but through his actions. Slowly, cautiously, he was allowed to interact with the kids, first in group settings, then individually. It was challenging beyond measure. Many were wary, some openly defiant. They saw his size, his quiet intensity, and assumed he was another authority figure, another adult who didn't understand. Then came Mark. Mark was 15, all sharp angles and simmering rage, a walking, talking powder keg. He'd been in and out of trouble since middle school, bouncing between foster homes and the streets. His eyes held a familiar, hardened cynicism that Jamal recognized from his own youth. Mark scoffed at the lame community center, at the soft programs, at the very idea of anyone caring. "What's your story, man?" Mark challenged Jamal one afternoon, leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, sizing him up. You got all these street smarts, but you're pushing paper here? What, you a cop? Ex-cop? Jamal took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of reckoning. He could deflect, could lie, could gloss over his past. Or he could be honest, truly honest, and risk everything. He pulled up a chair across from Mark. No, Mark. I'm not a cop, and I'm not an ex-cop. I'm an ex-con. Mark's eyes widened, a flicker of genuine surprise breaking through his usual bravado. No way. Way, Jamal said, a wry smile touching his lips. Spent 7 years inside. Started when I was your age, running with the wrong crowd, making stupid decisions. Thought I was tough. Thought I was invincible. Ended up losing my freedom, hurting my family, and wasting years of my life. I know the game you're playing, Mark. I played it too. And I'm telling you it's not worth it. The confession hung in the air, heavy and raw. Other kids nearby had stopped their activities, listening. Mark stared, processing. He'd expected a clean-cut do-gooder, not someone who'd walked the same dark paths. So, you ain't just talking out your butt? Mark finally mumbled, looking away, a hint of curiosity replacing his usual scorn. No, Mark. I'm not. I'm talking from experience. From the inside of a cell. From the pain of seeing my mother cry at visitation. From the regret of missing out on everything for nothing. That was the turning point. Not just for Mark, but for how the other kids saw Jamal. He wasn't just a counselor, he was a survivor. He wasn't telling them what to do, he was showing them what not to do, through the landscape of his own scarred life. He started holding informal sessions, not in a sterile office, but in the gym, on the basketball court, or just leaning against a wall, sharing stories, answering their questions honestly, without judgment. He talked about the allure of easy money, the false sense of power, the fleeting highs, and the crushing lows. He talked about the insidious nature of gang loyalty, how it promised family but delivered betrayal. He spoke about the moment he realized he deserved more, the slow, agonizing process of re-educating his mind, finding new purpose, and fighting every day to prove he was more than his worst mistake. Mark, in particular, gravitated towards Jamal. He'd still act out, still test boundaries, but he'd also seek Jamal out, asking questions he wouldn't dare voice to anyone else. How do you stop, though? Mark asked one day, picking at a loose thread on his hoodie. When everyone you know is doing it, when it's all you see. Jamal looked at him, seeing the genuine struggle in his eyes. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, Mark. It feels like you're disconnecting from everything, like you're walking alone into the dark. But you're not. You gotta find new connections, new loyalties. And that takes courage. More courage than joining a gang ever will. He worked tirelessly with Mark, helping him with his homework, encouraging him to join the center's basketball team, even just listening when Mark ranted about his frustrations. He understood that Mark didn't need saving as much as he needed to be seen, to be heard, and to be shown that a different path existed and was achievable. One winter evening, Jamal got a frantic call from Ms. Evans, his parole officer, who sometimes worked with the center. Mark was missing. He'd gotten into a fight at school, stormed out, and his foster parents couldn't find him. There were rumors he was back with his old crew, looking for trouble, possibly involving a rival group that had been stirring things up. Jamal's heart hammered. He knew exactly where Mac would go. The abandoned warehouse near the old train tracks, a place where young, reckless dreams got twisted into nightmares. He drove there, the memories of his own past crashing down on him. The rush of adrenaline, the desperate need to prove himself, the blind rage, it was all too vivid. He found them in the gloomy cavern of the warehouse, Mark and two older, intimidating figures, their faces masked by shadows, a gleam of something metallic in one of their hands. Mark looked scared, but also defiant, backed into a corner, on the precipice of a choice that could change his life forever, just as Jamal had once stood. Mark! Jamal's voice cut through the tense silence. The older figures turned, their eyes narrowed, instantly recognizing Jamal as an outsider. One of them, a bulky guy named Reaper, took a step forward, his hand still clenching a wrench. Jamal recognized him, an old acquaintance from his past life, still caught in the same cycle. Well, Reaper sneered, a cruel glint in his eye. Look who it is. Jamal Davis. Heard you went soft, counselor. Coming to save the little lambs now. Jamal ignored the taunt, his eyes fixed on Mark. Mark, come on. Let's go. Mark hesitated, torn between the pull of his old world and the fragile hope Jamal represented. Reaper laughed. He ain't going nowhere. He's with us now. Ain't that right, kid? He nudged Mark. Jamal stepped forward, placing himself between Mark and Reaper. He's not with anyone, Reaper. He's making his own choices. And right now, his choice is to walk away. Reaper's face contorted in anger. You always were a fool, Jamal. Think you're different now. You're still dirt from the same ground. He raised the wrench. Jamal didn't flinch. He just held Reaper's gaze, a quiet strength radiating from him. Maybe I am, but I'm building something with that dirt now. Something real. Something that doesn't leave kids like him bleeding in an alley or locked in a cage. His words, spoken with calm conviction, seemed to deflate some of Reaper's aggression. Perhaps it was the unexpected honesty, perhaps the memory of their shared past, or perhaps the sheer, unyielding resolve in Jamal's eyes. Reaper lowered the wrench, a flicker of something akin to shame or recognition passing over his face before he masked it with a grunt. Whatever, man. He ain't worth the trouble. He gestured to his associate, and they melted back into the shadows, leaving Mark and Jamal alone. Mark looked at Jamal, his face pale, his shoulders slumping in relief. You came. Always, Jamal said, a hand on his shoulder. Let's go home, Mark. That night, something fundamentally shifted in Mark. He hadn't just been saved. He'd seen Jamal put his own safety on the line for him. He'd seen a living example of what true strength looked like, not the bravado of the streets, but the courage to stand for something, even against a dangerous past. From that day forward, Mark became one of Jamal's most dedicated ments. He still had his struggles, but he applied himself in school, excelled on the basketball team, and even started peer mentoring younger kids, sharing his own story, echoing Jamal's lessons. The years that followed saw Jamal flourish. His reputation grew, not just within the community center, but across the city. He secured grants, expanded programs, and brought in other former gang members who, inspired by his journey, sought to use their experiences for good. He became a beacon of hope, a living testament to the power of transformation. His family, once distant, slowly began to reconnect, seeing the man he had become. One evening, years later, Jamal stood on a stage at a youth leadership conference, addressing a packed auditorium of eager young faces. Mark, now a college student studying social work, sat in the front row, a proud smile on his face. They say your past defines you, Jamal began, his voice strong and clear. And for a long time, I believed that. I believed the choices I made when I was just a kid, the mistakes I carried, would be my identity forever. But here's the truth. Your past is a part of your story, but it's not the whole book. You hold the pen. You decide what the next chapter says. He paused, looking out at the hopeful faces that reminded him of Mark and of himself all those years ago. It won't be easy. There will be judgment, doubt, even temptation to fall back into old patterns. But every single day, you have a choice to learn, a choice to grow, a choice to build something meaningful, not just for yourself, but for your community. And if a kid from the streets who spent 7 years behind bars can find a way to make a difference, then so can you. Your toughest struggles can become your greatest strengths. Your past mistakes can become your most powerful lessons. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As he finished, the audience erupted in applause, a wave of energy and hope filling the room. Jamal looked at Mark, who gave him a thumbs up. He thought of Miss Evans, of Mrs. Davies, of all the people who had given him a chance, and of all the kids he now had the privilege to guide. The chill of the autumn air still hit him sometimes, sparking old memories, but now it was just the wind. The shadows of his past were still there, but they no longer defined him. They were simply a backdrop, highlighting the light he had found, and the light he was now able to share. Jamal Davis, the ex-con, had truly become Jamal Davis, the youth counselor, a testament to the enduring power of redemption and the boundless potential for a second chance. He was home now, not just in a building, but within himself, finally free. That will be all for today. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Goodbye.